the safety of whistleblowers in the country. That also continues to be a pressing concern. It's also once again under the spotlight. It follows recent allegations and public statements made by KwaZulu Natal Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. His remarks have stirred a conversation about the real cost of speaking out. Now, the risks to one's career, mental health, in the most tragic cases as well. We've also seen instances of people losing their lives. And so we have seen all this before. But from the murder of Pamela Mabini, who was gunned down for her role in exposing serious crimes, perhaps to the assassinations of Babita Deokaran, Mohlala, Armand Swart, many others that haven't been named. But it is clear that whistleblowers in South Africa, they operate in an environment of fear as well as danger. Many lose their jobs, they face harassment, they're isolated, they're forced to also flee the country. And the big question often remains, who's really protecting those who protect the public interest at large? We'll be having this conversation. Joining us to perhaps reflect on this more deeply, looking at these deeply rooted issues, we've got Advocate Adila Chawan, a prominent voice in whistleblower protection. We've also got Ben Theron, CEO of Whistleblower House. It's an organization that obviously just works closely with those who speak out against corruption and injustice. So on that note, a very good afternoon to both of you. Thank you, Advocate Adila, as well, for joining us. I just want to start off with you, Advocate Adila, in terms of the mechanisms currently in place, the framework that is offered to whistleblowers. Talk to us about the gaps that obviously still exist in relation to that framework.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me on. The gaps that exist in terms of the current legislation, primarily the Protected Disclosure Act, is the lack of physical security programs, which one has seen. US has these witness protection programs. South Africa does not have something like that in place. And also financial reward system. Those are options or opportunities that are available to whistleblowers in other countries, including emergency relocation funds. That is not an option available to South Africans, but it's something that is available to, say, in Australia. So it's rather unfortunate that our Protected Disclosure Act, although it offers some safeguards such as, immunity from civil or criminal administrative liabilities and protection from occupational detriment like dismissal or demotion, it is not adequate at this point in time to protect both whistleblowers and forensic investigators.
Okay, Advocate Adila, thank you for weighing on that. It's clear that the current, mechanisms in place are not fit for purpose. And so, Ben, if you can hear us, good afternoon. And also thank you for joining us on the SABC at this hour. We're just looking at a distinction between internal whistleblowing and external whistleblowing when it does come out into the media, the repercussions on that front as well, but the legal consequences. What have we witnessed in our country over the years if we're going to take some of those isolated incidences that have emerged?
I want to correct a statement that the advocate just made now. Okay. The witness protection exists in South Africa, but for you to qualify for the witness protection, the case must be enrolled, and either the MPA or the Hawks or the SIU must be involved in the process, and then you qualify for witness protection. Everything else is scheduled through. The difficulty we have in South Africa is that over the last 3 years, we've been trying to make whistleblower a priority for government. Sadly, we can't find any priority that they have. If you look at any other industry in South Africa involved with the government, whether it is education, health, security, SNDF, there are no priorities. So I don't see that the whistleblower can become a priority at the moment when there are no other priorities. And it will be interesting to see how the President tonight responds to the allegations and the accusations made by the general, to see how he responds to the general as a whistleblower. And let's speak about the protection of the general as well. We expect the general have come forward and he's spoken against his colleagues and his bosses. We expect his bosses and the colleagues now to protect him. We are not too sure that is a workable solution at the moment. We've been trying very hard to change the legislation over the last 3 years. We're waiting for new legislation. We hear of the Office of the Public Integrity coming forward under the SIU. All these things are up in the air, but nothing is happening fast enough, and people are losing their lives on a daily basis.
All right, Ben, thank you for weighing in there. Definitely questions about priorities and also the manner in which, the system operates, to your point about what's happening in relation to Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. Advocate Adela, there are obviously questions about anonymous disclosures. Is there provision for that in relation to whistleblowing? Tell us a little bit more about how things could unfold on that front, and if not, how they should be incorporated as well in relation to South Africa.
Well, the difference is a whistleblower can blow the whistle and be anonymous and request that his name be kept anonymous. But it is not mandatory in South Africa. And I think that is the challenge that we face because of the extent of corruption within, whether it's private sector or public sector, that eventually the whistleblower's name is exposed and it compromises their safety. So there has to be more safeguards that are put in place in order to protect the whistleblowers, including making the whistleblower's name being kept anonymous a mandatory requirement.
Because there's obviously freedom of expression that exists in our country. We also have the right to receive information. We also have the right to impart information. But the questions about how, this impacts whistleblower rights, help us balance that question, that conundrum as well.
For me, it's actually already legislated because you have it in the protection programs that is offered to criminals that come out and testify in terms of being a witness protection program. They are protected in that. So it's not like it needs new legislation to be developed because you can keep the person's name anonymous and it's not a compromise in terms of people believing freedom of speech and their constitutional right is being violated. I'm not in agreement with that.
Okay, and so Ben, on the back of that, we're looking at the consequences as well today. You've spoken about the implications. Even Advocate Adila, mentioned how there's a lack of physical protection. But if we're looking at whistleblowers, if we're looking at how they harmed, liability in relation to what's transpired, is the state liable for that? Can they sue for breach of their constitutional rights to life, especially if their life is compromised? The quality of life as well, dignity at large? What's emerging on that front?
We don't know because this has never been tested in court. What we are trying to do is to fix up the legislation as it is today because the legislation is very poorly done. So we need to beef that up dramatically. We have the Whistleblower House supports whistleblowers through the legal process. And at the moment, we've got cases at every level, whether CCMA, the High Court, the Labour Court, Supreme Court of Appeal, as well as the highest court in the land, Constitutional Court. So we're hoping that the constitutional case that we have there will set the tone going forward with regard to whistleblower rights. And I think that will be groundbreaking one that is being heard. We are waiting to hear from the Constitutional Court in that regard.
What about the potential whistleblower support fund? Is that something, that also, is being investigated or looked into, whether it's publicly funded or even privately funded? Is that something that could also be part of the solution at this point?
Advocate Adela actually mentioned a few. Let me tell you what the Whistleblower House offers.
Okay.
Because that's what we ask government to put into the legislation. Number one, legal assistance before you blow the whistle, so you understand your right within that in terms of currently called the Protected Disclosure Act. Secondly, and then afterwards, if you come forward and you get victimized by the company, you lose your job, etc., you have legal rights. Secondly, psychological support. It is unbelievable lonely when you become a whistleblower because at work and at home in your environment, you get isolated, you get bullied. You can't get a job, you suffer financially. So psychological. Financial support is critical because in South Africa with the high employment rate, it's extremely difficult to find a job. Can you imagine how difficult it is when you are tagged with a tag of a whistleblower? Almost impossible. And then lastly, financial rewards. Financial support, not even rewards yet, but rewards would be great as well. A percentage the way we do, you see in America, a percentage of any recouped money can go to the whistleblower. For the very least, we should support whistleblowers when they've risked their livelihood, they risk their lives to come forward to save a company and save South Africa. That is not on the table. So those are the four things that we advocate very aggressively, and we hope that government will listen with the legislation currently being drafted and promulgated, hopefully soon, based on the president's promise that before the end of this year, that legislation will be done.
Ben, do you think at this point there is enough political will to change the system, or is this just lip service, coming to the fore from some of the leaders, given that the issues come to the fore again? If you had the attention of Parliament as well, what's some of those top priorities that you would advocate for as we're speaking right now, if they are listening?
I just spoke about the lack of priorities in South Africa. If the students are future of the country with NSFAS, National the fund for students, total mess. Health, total mess. Education, total mess. There are no priorities in South Africa. So at what stage do you ever think that a whistleblower environment right now will become a priority? We need a reset in South Africa, and I'm hoping tonight is the first step that the president will take that say, I am willing to put my head on a block. He has not been able to do that since he's been appointed.
Well, Advocate Adila, you've heard what Ben had to say. I mean, if you weigh in on really where to from here, if we're looking at, some of the recommendations as well. But even just for people who are looking into, serving as a whistleblower, what should they be doing at this point? What advice do you have for them tuned in?
My view is that there should be an independent agency created outside the NPA and the SAPS with the sole mandate of receiving, investigating whistleblowers' disclosures, coordinating immediate measures, liaising with the law enforcement without risking the whistleblowers' exposure. Also, the introduction of physical and digital security measures, armed escorts or safe houses where needed for whistleblowers, emergency hotlines directing, whistleblowers where they can get assistance. And, I think we've exhausted this thing about offering whistleblowers financial and legal support, because it's becoming a major issue where whistleblowers are left without their jobs, without being able to support their families. And it sends a very bad signal in the market that if you're a whistleblower, there are dire consequences, and it will then have serious adverse impact on South Africa, both locally and internationally. If we can't protect our whistleblowers, we are then supporting, that there's no punishment for crime. So whistleblowers will not come forward, and we will have almost reached a stage of being lawless.
Well, truth telling, we're asking whether it can come at too high of a price. More questions than answers, but we're obviously awaiting the president's address tonight. Ben Theron, thank you for joining us, as well as Advocate Adila Chawan for weighing in, of course, in relation to, whistleblowers in South Africa.